gentlemen, this is the last session of the conclave, and it's on the pertinent subject of e-commerce and what e-commerce will mean for the Indian economy and indeed for Indian society as a whole. It's been dubbed as a concept that is going to revolutionize the way in which we live and work in the world. And I wanted to start off by asking a very poignant question to Saloni from Technopak about the reach of e-commerce. A pet phrase of the current government has been Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, and I want you to clarify one particular issue. For somebody like me who's a layperson in this field, e-commerce seems to be a rich man's concept. How is it relevant to the many millions of people in the rural areas and the poor of India?
Thank you, Manoj. Actually, would just like to mention that we think at Technopak, we think e-commerce is absolutely one of the most democratic concepts that one can have in the country. It's actually a whole set of manufacturers, companies can sell to the entire consuming base, be it in India or overseas. It's a concept which really doesn't differentiate on any parameter, be it economic, be it social, be it which part of the country you're staying in. And it's actually one of the most democratic retail concepts that one could have. In terms of reach, in terms of, one would not think that it's limited to rich India currently. Yes, maybe access to a digital gadget is currently limited in the country, be it larger cities or medium-sized cities. But the initiatives that are being taken at multiple levels, you know, be it the telecom companies, be it the Indian government, the fact that digital India would be accessed through everyone, be it rural or be it urban space, is something that is really going to enable e-commerce.
Thank you very much, Saloni. I will now come to Anu. McKinsey, you advise governments and prime ministers around the world. What are you saying to this new government about e-commerce? What should they be thinking about, particularly bearing in mind the concept of Sabke Saath, Sabka Vikas? Is it really going to, permeate all the way down?
So I think that's a great question. There's a lot of excitement in this country about the potential that technology broadly and internet and e-commerce related technologies in particular hold out for India. And that's been a subject, or that's been our thesis based on the research we've done, which we've been discussing with governments around the world, in India as well as in countries like the US and China and so on. I think it was Amit in the previous session who made this point that you can't really extrapolate a linear trend. You know, there's really no point. We are at an infancy. But on e-commerce, it's very useful, I think, just to look at some of the numbers coming out of China. Not the top line numbers, which are very well known and very exciting, but really if you double click on what the true impact for the Chinese economy and Chinese people are when you reach an e-commerce market of that scale, it's in a way quite revealing and telling, because this could have lessons for India. And when you look at these numbers, I think there are two or three very striking things that stand out. One is that e-commerce is really driving incremental demand and consumption in a very big way in China. So this is not a substitution game. This is about meeting latent needs and therefore increasing amounts of consumption, opening up new markets. This is not just about substituting online for offline.
You make a very interesting point in relation to China, and hopefully we'll be able to come back at that. But I've done ladies first, and before I come to Nitin and the other gentlemen on the panel, I'd like Dr. Suraj Kumar from Niti Foundation, because you've been doing some work on this as well, to share some of your thoughts.
The retail landscape in India has changed dramatically. One way where I think e-commerce can really tap into the economic potential of India, and the potential is huge, even at 4.6% growth rate of GDP. We were adding Dubai or Hong Kong or Singapore to the economy every quarter. Okay, so I think that India has been sort of, there's no need for us to be defensive about how the India story is panning out. As far as the potential for e-commerce is concerned, I think trade in goods and services about 10% of GDP, which would mean if we are adding about $102 billion to the economy every year, about 10 billion is coming from additional economic activity in the area of trade in goods and services. So very clearly there is an important market opportunity. But it is also true that we are also a country of missed opportunities. So there would be two very important areas to invest in as far as really realizing the potential of e-commerce is concerned. First of all, the ease of trade, which is being much talked about, ease of business. And NITI is now engaging with the Commerce Ministry to do a significant study on an ease of trade index and report. I think ease of trade and ease of e-commerce have to go together. But when I look at the literature on ease of doing business in India, ease of e-commerce does not really figure, because basically these are survey-based indexes and estimations, which apart from various methodological flaws are basically based on the perceptions of the business sector, as distinct from being based on some sound macroeconomic data. So first is that to integrate e-commerce concerns into any discussion on ease of business is very, very important. The second area, while India has put in place lots of independent regulators, and maybe I hope it doesn't come about, we will have as many independent regulators as there are gods in the Hindu pantheon. But on a more serious note, when it comes to quality of service standards from the regulators, okay, we are not doing well at all.
But before I come to the representatives from government, I'd like Nitin from Google, because obviously, let's not make any bones about it, Google are going to be one of the biggest beneficiaries of this revolution, and you've done your own reports and studies. So what are your reports saying to you?
So we released a report on e-commerce industry recently, just about, I think, 7 days back. Very clearly, and I completely agree with what Anu has said in terms of the potential in India. Just about 2000, and in the previous panel, Amit from Amazon also mentioned, it's just about a 2-year-old industry. So we had done a similar report in 2012, and in 2012 our estimates, just 2 years back, the industry was less than $1 billion. The estimate is that this year that industry will be close to $4.5 billion, and our forecasts are that by 2016,
still minuscule in comparison to your market. In comparison to your market cap.
Yeah, our market cap. But I'm talking only about e-commerce in India. So let's look at $4.5 billion, which is expected to go to at least $15 billion in 2016. One is the revenue aspect, so that's the $15 billion, and if you really look at the organized retail in India, that's $50 billion after 20 years of existence. But what is more important is the number of shoppers online. There will be close to 100 million, which is close to 10% of India's population is going to shop online. So the question which you asked when you started off, is this a rich or a tier 1 phenomenon? No. Because if there are 10 crore people who will be shopping online, they cannot be only rich people. The reason for that is because the report very clearly shows it's not about tier 1. More than 50% of the shoppers are coming from tier 3 and tier 4 towns. Okay, one. Second, more than 50% of the transactions, and you also heard the same number from Amit from Amazon, more than 50% of the transactions are happening from mobile devices today. And mobile devices where the smartphones are now as cheap as 4,500 rupees or 4,000 rupees. So buying a 4,000 rupee phone is not a big thing, and if you really see what people are buying products which are just not available in tier 3, tier 4 towns.
Anu, do you have any statistics, anybody on the panel, how many jobs this will create over the next 5 years, 10 years, the e-commerce industry in itself?
We don't have a sizing of this. It's a very interesting question. It's a question that's occupying actually some of our research focus in different parts of the world, because it's a germane question everywhere. And I think it's a nuanced answer, right? The answer is that e-commerce, and more broadly I would say internet technologies, because they do disrupt value chains fundamentally, right? They do unlock productivity, they disrupt value chains, and there is an element of the workforce which over a period of time will have to reskill and move to doing different things, because the things that they do are not necessarily consistent with the new value chains. But everywhere that we have looked at this, there is a net incremental job creation because of this new demand, right? That could be an order of magnitude, you know, maybe 10% or so of the workforce over a period of time. So there is a net incremental job creation that kicks in and counterweighs and creates therefore new opportunities for the labor force. So it's a nuanced answer to your question.
So while numbers might not be something that one can look at, but the fact is that e-commerce allows employment across various levels of skill. So you might need certain skills for the technology part of it, but there are certain aspects of the ecosystem which would be logistics, distribution, where you're looking at employment for limited skill or no skilled people as well. So in that sense, the ecosystem provides for employment. It really covers a very vast segment of people.
And that brings me on to the point that, a few years ago when email started becoming very prolific, people started the forecast of postal services around the world. That's the end of them. So is this the end of the postal service, or is this now the savior for India Post and the entire Indian Postal Service?
Well, rather I would say it's a new beginning of the post office now in the light of the challenges. And
I think this is going to be the headlines in the papers tomorrow.
Opportunities that we have. But let me take a quick minute to thank at least two of the panelists and their organizations that they had sensitized us about a couple of years back about the market projections in e-commerce. In particular, I'm referring to Technopak white paper and of course the inputs from other institutions as well, and what Nitin has just mentioned about the figures, and broadly they are all matching. So without touching into the business part of it and the technology part of it, because the connectivity and reach has been discussed in detail, much more detail, I would like to touch upon the 18 to 20% of the core challenge and opportunity also. And this was also, I take the cue from the previous session's discussion when our panelist from Amazon had mentioned about it. There was a clipping going on in the interim period in this conference. There's a happiness in the face of a child student here. She gets something is delivered to her physically. So in this entire complexity of this connectivity, and there is a very huge challenge, the core area, that something gets originated somewhere in terms of a good or a packet or a parcel, and then the travel from the manufacturing point to a fulfillment center or to a large warehouse like Amazon, to transmission, to delivery, and ultimately reaching out at the doorstep. This part is equally challenging. It has got equal potentials, and which needs to be kind of addressed. My experiences are based on the experiences of my organization, but I'm making a generic statement that this is a huge challenge, and particularly referring to the tier 3 and tier 4 areas where we have been strong traditionally. And that is the area where I think if we need to look, needs a relook in terms of the question which you have asked. It's a beginning in terms of the potential, it's a beginning in terms of the way we have to also address ourselves. Whatever interactions we have had in last couple of years with the e-commerce companies and who have been in touch with us, and we have been reaching out to them, it's a process of learning on a day-to-day basis. Primarily beginning with an element of integration on the software platform, the API interface integration I'm hinting about. A lot of work needs to be done on that area, simplifying things. There is an element of cash movement also back and forth, and an element of information movement back and forth. So the entire thing has to be seen in totality, and it is that context I refer to. It's a not only major challenge for us, it's a big opportunity as an organization for us.
Alok, where does the Postal Service Board sort of come into all of this?
See, basically, while Mr. Pandey looks after the business side of it, I look after the technology side in integration. So, 2-3 things are very important. You see, when we talk about tier 3-4 cities and we talk about cheap smartphones which are available, I think it was in the earlier session, it was hinted in a passing manner, was that connectivity is bad. So the experience, whether it's on a tablet or on a smartphone of a consumer, is not good. As in the post office also, this is a challenge that we are facing, that the offices are connected, but fulfillment takes time. That is one. And then there's a fear of using your card or your bank account in those cities by those people online. So of course that has been to some extent taken care of by the COD, and we ourselves have introduced that. So that's a fear that has been allayed, but connectivity still remains a big issue.
I'm going to open it up to the floor in a little while, but before I do, Saloni, you advise a lot of companies, both domestic Indian companies and international companies. What are your international companies saying about the don'ts? What are the bad experiences they've had around the world? Have you had an indication from them that, look, if India is going down this road, which it's not an if, it will happen, what are the things that we need to make sure we avoid?
So the challenges that usually most of the international companies encounter, one of them is, of course, if they'd like to invest in the country, there is a limitation to the foreign direct investment that can come in the retail sector. And that's something, at least we feel very strongly about that, in case we are looking at opening the entire channels and looking at increasing consumption in the country, we are actually limiting our growth by not allowing foreign direct investment to come into the sector.
Talking about multi-brand retail.
Multi-brand retail. Also, even single-brand retail companies do face a lot of challenges while they are allowed to. There are many, many riders that the Indian government has put on them in terms of investment. So that remains one of the most important and crucial challenges that the companies need to look at. Second is, of course, and it was talked about in the earlier panel discussion as well, movement of goods across the country, and really understanding the taxation structure and the fact that each state would have its own taxation structure. You need to warehouse in multiple locations. That's applicable both for brick and mortar companies and e-commerce companies. And the fact that the Indian government hasn't really formulated a very, very clear strategy. There is ambiguity, and there are multiple interpretations of various notifications that come in. And that is something that we would request the Indian government that India is on the radar for so many international firms, and if we just have a clear policy and have a very, very robust strategy, we would be looking at much more investment coming into the country.
Okay. Does that, what Saloni is saying, does that resonate with Google? You're already here, you've got lots of big plans, but what are your asks of government?
So I think asks specifically from the government would not be specifically from a government perspective, but I think whatever is great for the user or the consumer is what we should do.
Dr. Suraj, if it's good for the consumer, it's good for the country. Do you agree with that?
Yes, as a proposition, it's indisputable, but between the idea and the reality.
But as a proposition, it's a good thing.
As a proposition, it's an excellent proposition.
But the reality?
That, to have a professional culture amongst independent regulators, to really, the license permit Raj is long gone, but the mindset it left behind still lingers. And as I said, that it's very true that in a room like this, we will all agree that we need to do our best to make sure that e-commerce and various other, I'm fairly sure that 20 years down the line, there will be a completely new field, when it comes to getting goods and services to people's doorstep. But I think in the short term, to focus on what I like to call policy reversals. It's not so much about saying, okay, let's put in a new policy. You can put in a new policy, won't get implemented. But at least the hurdles that are still there, they need to be taken up and dismantled. And that is something that I think that think tanks, that advocacy groups, that private sector can really make a strong case. And therefore, it's very important to come up with strong numbers. If you make the case that e-commerce can help grow the economy by 2%, okay, then certainly the Minister of Finance will listen.
I have to bring Vinitji here because you're saying, you mentioned everybody except the public sector. And from what I was listening from what Vinitji was saying, the public sector are also gearing up for this now. So it'll be interesting to hear your perspective on this.
If you see the social dynamics part of it, two quick takes I have is that, see, with the growing middle class and the choices available through these portals, these two things are defining the way people used to express their choices and the demand part of it. You cannot stop it. And ultimately the consumer, to my knowledge, is going to be benefited because he has a lot of options available without having the drudgery to roam around and feel and see for the visit places and things like that. That is one part. There are lot of opportunities for all. collection, packaging, transmission, delivery doorstep. All these have different components where, I mean, we as a department fit in everywhere, from the first end and the last end. What I'm hinting at is that it is a tremendous opportunity in the sense that it will grow, at least for the time to come. Now, coming to the tier 3 and rural sector and things like that. Now, still, from the post office point of view, if I have to say that the rural post office, the village post office is still a community center. And if I can borrow the terminology of, again, Mr. T.S.R. Subramaniam, is that a postmaster is a moving KYC. I mean, he knows everyone. So, apart from the normal physical mail and delivery of other services, the information exchange and the sense of sharing, that also passes on through the system. So, that is a major advantage which the society has. And coming back to the business part of it, yes, there was a challenge, say 10-15 years ago, personal mail and written mail was going down. But simultaneously, a lot of other opportunities came back in terms of commercial mail, book packets, parcels and things like that. So again, going back to your basic question, there was never an end to the role of this segment, a delivery distributor, because there has to be a physical good which has to reach at the doorstep. So that is that.
Shri Ravindra, who is the director of the DIPP, and he's in charge of Make in India. So please can I ask Shri Ravindra to come onto the stage, because he's carrying also a message from the minister as well. So please give him a big round of applause for stepping in at this stage as well. And I'll come to you in a few minutes after the discussion on FDI and retail is finished. Can I open it up to the floor, please? Are there any questions?
Hi, good evening. My name is Kriti Trehan, and I'm a lawyer. I was just wondering, we keep seeing all these newspaper reports about how a lot of these e-commerce websites are now planning to start delivery via drones. Now, while I know that that is something which is not a reality in India right now, tomorrow, if it were to become a reality with a policy backing as well, I was wondering if the postal system in its traditional form has any thoughts or any plans to integrate these two radically different delivery services. Would there be some idea of trying to integrate the two? Would there be a plan that for these two disruptive services to work together? I was just wondering if there were any ideas on that. Thank you.
As far as delivery part is concerned, see, the transmission modes are by air, road and rail. So whatever is the best possible fast transportation system, that is an ongoing process that has always been traditionally a part of our kind of response to the growing demands in terms of particular area. What you are hinting at and what I'm also subscribed to the rural sector, when we are going to reach out to the last mile, we need to have a dedicated transport network where we have that kind of an arrangement that we cut the time of transmission from handing over or taking over the particular article from one point or warehouse or some place, the major transmission and the last mile delivery. Well, technologically, I cannot visualize at this stage as to what would be the options available, but even now, whatever options are available with us, say mechanization of delivery, mechanization of pickup, concentrating things. So all these things are going on. In fact, whatever interactions we are having with e-commerce companies, based on their requirement, we are also kind of responding to those challenges, and we are working out mechanism and modalities how we can help them better, and in the process we help the consumer.
Okay, mine is part question, part comment. So I see lack of education or lack of literacy really coming in the way of e-commerce when you talk about the last mile, whether it's tier 3 cities or the villages. So what, right, lack of literacy, because how do you buy when you can't even understand what's there? So do you think it's going to be mostly by videos that e-commerce is videos the future of e-commerce, where they just click and it tells them how to buy or what the product is about?
The minister had touched upon this. That is the beauty of the information technology, that by seeing also you can do things. I mean, you need not be... Now imagine a situation that a facilitation counter is available in a remote post office. So technology plus the faith that system has, who can guide them, educate them. Imagine a reverse kind of thing, that the demand also gets getting generated from that side. I look at it this way. Even delivery part is one, but even say the slums or other sectors where you don't have a brick and mortar presence, and you have a person there and you have a network there which is connected across the country, and with some hand holding available from the post office side and technology blending, has tremendous potentials.
Regarding the first part, I had opportunity to work in the rural area also. So first of all, just because of illiteracy, they may not be able to understand the need for the product may not be there. And even with literacy, I might not be in a position to really assess that the product I am looking at is really there. So one thing is right characters which are given on the portal, and from them whether I can actually make out whether they are of my use or not. But what becomes important in e-commerce is one, like an option of sending back the product. Once you receive it and see that the product is not one which is suiting my requirement, and then I can return it. A number of portals are now providing that option. So that becomes empowerment of the customer in that regard. Second thing which Mr. Suraj Kumar also said, enforceability of your law and enforceability of your contract becomes an important issue. If product which is available is not of the quality that I want, if description is proper and the same thing is being given, I can understand. Literacy can be an issue there. But otherwise, if that option is available of returning the product, and then that can be enforced. That being enforced is the issue. Because we have good laws, even in IPR, you raise that issue. Then the issue of protocol and ease of doing business comes in there. Protocol with regards to who will initiate the action, whether it should be the government to suo motu initiate the action, or should it be the company whose IPR is infringed upon, they should start the action. If government suo motu starts the action, then it becomes an issue of ease of doing business. Whether we should go for all those checking points that before starting an e-commerce portal, all these things should be checked or not. So it's kind of a balance that you have to strike between different issues. That's how you should look at the law also, that there is a balance which has to be struck in all those aspects. It's a matter of perspective. It becomes a matter of perspective. For one person, it can be bringing ease of doing business. For another person, it can be ease of, choice of the product. For one person, it will be protection of his IPR. So those are the things where we have to strike a balance. Thank you.
So I do sense a lot of opportunities, but a lot of opportunities for innovation as well, especially to attract the Indian interest, Indian culture into e-commerce as well. So this is a topic I think that can go on, and I'm sure it will go on, and in some ways revolutionize various organizations and companies, and indeed the country over the coming years. Please can you everybody give a big round of applause to our panelists. I'm going to ask them to remain seated whilst I ask Shri Ravinderji to give a few words in conclusion. We'd like to hear a few words from you, and indeed the message from the Minister as well. Ravinderji.
Yeah, since I am a late joiner, I am not privy to the discussion which has gone through this earlier session. But I have your program, and there are few questions which have you raised in this. How Make in India can converge with the Digital India initiative. We believe that rather Digital India is going to give a big boost to the Make in India. Because if you look at Make in India, there are 4 pillars we have identified in that. And the first pillar, which we call, is increasing ease of doing business. And that is the area where maximum can be achieved through. First of all, we believe that making things online creates a environment which is conducive in getting things done easily. Like if you look at registration of a company, initially it used to take a long process. You have to go apply for a name and then wait for months, and then you finally will get a name, and then you will apply for the registration. Now we are thinking that this can be made into one process. Getting the name online, like you get a name for your user ID in mail, and you can get a mail and name, and then Simply at the same time you can think of getting it registered then and there. So information technology is going to be a big driver in ensuring that things are integrated. Now we can think of integrating a number of processes into a single process. We can think of combining the form, taking the common fields, and then using the information technology we can send individual forms to each of the departments so that the applicant is in the requirement of filling the repetitive fields only once. We have already initiated this kind of platform. It is known as EBIS platform, where we are right now in the process of integrating 13 additional services. We have already started with 2 services. One is for industrial license and one is with regards to industrial entrepreneurs memorandum. These both are being made online. And 13 additional services we are expecting we will be able to integrate them by 31st March. And then 12 additional services we have identified. Again, we are trying to bring them on by 31st of March, but since they are on the phase 2, so time frame is right now not that much clear. And once that is achieved, then we are thinking of integrating these all services, 25 services, through one single process on a requirement basis. Like not everybody might be requiring explosives license. So as the requirement is there, he can choose exactly what approval they require and put them, request them on through a single form. The second part which we are looking at is creation of a strong structure, infrastructure, and smart cities are part of that. And when we talk about smart cities, then connectivity on the net becomes one of the important areas there. So whether it is for e-commerce or for taking our services or a number of other things, connectivity becomes a very important factor, and right now in India the connectivity is a big issue. So Digital India has a component where they are saying that high-speed connectivity should be taken to the village level also. So those are the areas where it's going to add to the way business interacts. It's going to add to the way approvals are given. It's going to add to the way logistics are arranged for the production and delivery of the things. Then similarly, IPR registration, another issue. A lot of digitization has been done in this, but still there is a requirement of making it more efficient. And again, information technology can help us in checking whether there are any duplicates, ensuring that things are filed without coming to the office, and then registration is conveyed without somebody coming to the office. So all those things are going to add to what we have identified as pillars of Make in India. Finally, we say that there is need of a new mindset, and trust becomes a very important component in this. Even for e-commerce, you have to trust that the portal is actually going to deliver. Like because of that, maybe right now we are insisting on cash or on delivery part, but once that trust is there, payments will become easier. People will be ready to pay through their banks and through their cards. So similarly, we are saying trust is another component in bringing out ease of doing business. And that trust can, to a large extent, be brought through different ways in which information technology is applied. And then certainly, enforcement is another important issue which we have to see.